All right, well, welcome back to the Clara CFO Group channel. My name is Hannah Smolinski, and today we're going to talk about the new applications that are available for first initial PPP borrowers and second round PPP borrowers, the ones who are going for their second draw. All right, so the SBA has just released the 2483 application and the 2483 SD application. These two applications are the ones that you want to be using if you're going to apply for the next round of PPP. So we're recording this in early January. It's actually January 10th, and these applications were just released, and this is in 2021. So make sure that you're using the right application when we're going to look for this. We'll make sure to put the links to these two applications in the description box below, but we don't want to use the original applications that went and were available on the SBA website for months and months and months. We need to go with the ones that were just released by the SBA. All right, these are the ones that are taking into consideration all of the new rules that happened with the Economic Aid Act. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through these applications, talk through exactly what you need. We're going to talk a little bit about how they're different, which kind of goes into a little bit of the eligibility between the two. And then we're also going to point out anything that's kind of important if you did get a first round loan and maybe you filled out that original application and now you're going for a second loan. I'm going to point out a couple of differences there too. So we're just going to dive into a screen share and walk through this. Really, the intention is for you to be familiar with the applications so you know first which one you need to be using. And then also you can kind of preempt anything if you need to be pulling other documentation, or really we're also going to go through some of the certifications because you want to make sure that you can really even honestly certify to some of these certifications and check the box honestly, because we want to try to avoid any potential fraud. And we want to make sure that the people who are getting these loans are the people who truly qualify for them and need them. All right. So really want to walk through this with you guys. And what we're going to do is just hop into a screen share right now in just a second. So if this information is helpful to you, please make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me out, helps everybody else out, because the more thumbs up, the more comments, the more other people are going to be able to see this video. All right. And we want to get the PPP program out to everybody who needs it. All right. So give the video a thumbs up, super helpful, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we've got more videos on the way. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the screen share. All right, so here we have the 2483 application, and this is the one that you're going to use if you are getting your first PPP loan. So maybe you did not get it in the first round, or you found out about the PPP after the deadline in August, and for whatever reason you weren't able to apply the first time around, but now you're coming and trying to get your first round of PPP. This is the application that you will use. And just to make it clear, it's the 2483 down here below. Okay, so that's where we find the form number. It's not this OMB control number up here. So we do have a couple additional organizations that are available to apply. And so this is both for the initial application if you're getting your first round and for the second draw. We have a couple additional organizations that weren't eligible before. So we have the 501c6 organizations and housing cooperatives that weren't eligible before, and now they are. So just be careful there, and just good to know. I think it's important to mention that if you're a 501c organization, if you're not specifically listed here, then that means that you are not eligible. All right. So they've made that pretty clear, that they're specifically opting into certain 501c organizations. All right. So just make sure that you're checking that and make sure you know exactly what your organization type is. All right. So all of this stuff up at the top is basically the same. They've added this box up here that says year of establishment. They did make a note that if you are a sole proprietor, you don't have to add that information in there. For the purposes of reporting, year of establishment, self-employed individuals and independent contractors may enter NA, not applicable. Okay, so if you are an organization, you've actually started an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp or a partnership, whenever you establish that, you want to go ahead and put that date in there. But if you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor, you can just go ahead and put NA. One thing they have over here is they have just a little checkbox on whether or not you meet the size requirements. So be sure to read those over there. And then it's basically just business name, NAICS code, which is another thing that you probably had to provide before, business address, EIN or social security number, business phone. All this stuff is pretty basic, okay? You've had to provide all of this other information before. And then we're going to do average monthly payroll. So this is where you take the total payroll costs for a full year, either 2019 or 2020, or the 12 months preceding the date of application. And you total all your payroll costs, and you want to include all the payroll costs that the PPP considers payroll costs. And then you add it all together and divide it by 12. That gives you your average monthly payroll. If you were not in operation for a full year, you can prorate the amount that you were in. So if you were in operations for 5 months, you can take your 5 months cost divided by 5 because of the 5 months. Okay, we're really just trying to get average payroll costs. And then you multiply it times 2.5 to get the amount that you're going to be requesting. Okay, this says do not include any EIDL advance. Okay. And then they're asking you to add your EIDL in here if you're wanting to refinance it. And then you're adding in your number of employees here. And this is a straight count of employees. You want to consider 1 for any business owner, like a sole proprietor or an independent contractor would put 1 here. You cannot put 0. So the owner of the business or owners, even if they're not on payroll, should be included here. All right, and then you're going to select the checkboxes of how you intend to use the money. Is it going to be mostly for payroll costs, rent, utilities? I would highly recommend making sure that you have payroll costs checked, because if that's really what the intention of the loan should be, and you won't be able to get it forgiven if you don't spend at least 60% on payroll costs. Okay, so be sure you're thinking about that before you take this loan. And then similar to the first time around, you're going to list any owners. And so these are owners of over 20%. And this information pretty much is all the same on the first and for the first round draw and the second round draw. The big difference here is that for the second round draw, we have to include both our first draw SBA loan number. So they want us to add that in here. So that they can look that up. And then they also want you to include numbers regarding your gross receipts. Now, remember that in order to be eligible for the second round of PPP, you have to have had a reduction in your gross receipts from 1 quarter compared year over year from 2019 to 2020 of at least 25%. All right, so you're going to need to put in which quarter you're comparing here, and then how much your gross receipts are. Now, it's important to note that if you are asking for a loan under $150,000, it does make a caveat here that says you don't have to provide documentation for this to prove this out at this point. However, I would highly recommend going ahead and getting your documentation order. You're going to have to provide it sometime before forgiveness, or at least at the time of forgiveness. So if you have it ready now and the bank wants to take it, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and have that ready. Okay. This could be as simple as a financial report pulled from your accounting software, or it could be an Excel spreadsheet that you have pulled together to prove out all of your gross receipts, or it could be bank statements, or it could be a combination of all of these things. Okay. The big thing is that we need to have documentation that comes back to showing how much you've actually received in the business. But what they're doing here is they're trying to make it a little bit easier for borrowers who are smaller to go ahead and apply for this money and not let this be a holdup for them to have to prove out that documentation right now. Okay. But you are going to need to put a number in here. So you need to have a good estimate of what you believe your gross receipts are 1 quarter over the next. All right. But this gross receipts test is only in the second draw application. That's what I really wanted to point out to you guys. If you are getting your initial PPP, you do not have to do that gross receipts test. Okay. All right. And now going into the owners, list the owners here. If you have more than 2 owners, it says attach a separate sheet if necessary. Remember, you're going to be putting this, most people are going to be actually putting this directly into their bank's portal. So your bank might have a way for you to add additional owners. So then we get into these questions below, and this is really where it's helping us continue to determine eligibility. So the SBA does not want to provide loans to certain people. And specifically, if you have been involved in criminal activity or if you've been given an SBA loan in the past and it has been delinquent or it has caused a loss to the government, there are certain questions that they want you to answer to so that they can make sure that they're not going to be issuing a loan to somebody who they have determined is not a good borrower, essentially. So read through all of these questions. I'm not really going to go through them. They were actually pretty much the same the first time around. So if you got a first time loan, you will see these on the second draw. They're pretty much all the same. But if you are not, if you did not borrow the first time around, and this is your first time looking at this, please read through this and make sure that you are very clear on what you are saying yes or no to. Now, it's important to see that if you answer no to 1, 2, 5, or if you answer yes to 1, 2, 5, or 6, this basically means that your loan will not be approved. All right. So, for example, if you've obtained a direct or guaranteed loan from the SBA, or any other federal agency that is currently delinquent or has defaulted in the last 7 years and caused the government loss, and you click yes on that, that basically means you will not get a PPP loan. But you need to make sure you're answering these honestly because you also don't want to be caught in a fraud situation, okay? If you lie to the government, this is essentially a fraud case. So do not find yourself there. All right. Now, I do want to make sure that I point out question number 3, because this question says, is the applicant or any owner of the applicant an owner of any other business or have common management, including management agreement with any other business? If yes, list the businesses and describe the relationship in a separate sheet. So this question was also in the first round of the PPP. I know many of you own multiple businesses. So this is not one of those questions that basically disqualify you from getting a PPP loan. It's just something that they want to know. All right. So they also added this question here, is the applicant a franchise? They also added this, if the franchise is listed in the SBA franchise directory, then what's the identifier code? So if you're a franchise, make sure you put that in there. All right. So let's go to the second page, and this has other certifications. So the certifications you definitely want to read through, especially since this is your first time ever reading through all of this documentation. If this is your first time, this information here gets really detailed, but it's basically just saying, are you eligible to apply? Read through it all. And most small business owners under 500 employees are going to be able to click yes to this. So just read through. If you're in any type of like special organization, make sure that you qualify here. Just do your due diligence and make sure you read through all of this really clearly so you know exactly what you're signing your name to. Now, on the second draw, I want to make sure that we are looking at this piece right here. So similarly, it's talking about eligibility in this section here. And this is one of the things that's different from the first round. It's both different from the initial borrower application that we're talking about, but then also this is different from the first time you applied for a loan. All right, so I really want you to read through all of these certifications and make sure that you can honestly and truthfully certify and sign your name to each one of these things, because you don't want to get caught in a situation where you are where the SBA is questioning these things and you might not actually have answered truthfully, okay? We do not want anybody going to jail for this. It's important too, just to mention that the SBA encourages the purchase to the extent feasible of American-made equipment and products. This wording changed a little bit from the first time around. I think they know a lot of people do not buy American-made products. That's part of their business model. They can't, always ensure that they're only going to buy American-made. So just make sure you keep that in mind. All right. One thing I wanted to mention is that when you're certifying down here and you're initialing these certifications in good faith. One thing that they have here listed is that the business had to be in operations as of February 15th, but then really importantly, and it has not permanently closed. I was getting some comments with people wondering if they had payroll in 2020, but they've closed now, can they still apply for a PPP loan because they had payroll costs? And then this is answering no. Even if you had payroll costs in all of 2020, if you have closed your business permanently as of the date that you're applying for this loan, you are not able to get a PPP loan. Okay. So just be clear there. And then also make sure that you consider this piece. Current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. I have some people who come and said and wanted to get a PPP loan, and they maybe even qualify because of the revenue test. But in all honesty, their business is doing really well now. It's actually doing better than it's ever done before. Maybe they don't have the need for it. And so then they have to really question whether or not they should be taking this loan. So this is a kind of a personal business ethics decision, but I do want you to consider this certification and try to make sure that you're determining whether or not you can honestly certify to this piece. All right, and since we're on the second draw application, we also have this certification about the 25% decline in revenue in gross receipts. All right, and they're saying that for loans greater than $150,000, you need to provide documentation to the lender substantiating the decline in gross receipts. And then those for under $150,000, they will need to provide documentation when they're seeking forgiveness. Okay, so just note that you're going to have to provide it sometime. It also says or upon SBA request. So you could have to provide it at any point in time. I would go ahead and get this prepared. Again, kind of like what we said, if you can, go ahead and get it ready. Why not? Go ahead and have it available for the bank or the SBA to review. And then the other thing that they want to do, they want you to certify to, is that if you're getting a second round loan, they want you to have used the full amount, including any increase, which is kind of interesting, of the first draw Paycheck Protection Program loan for eligible expenses. All right. So if you used your full loan amount, but maybe you did not use it for eligible expenses and you don't think you're going to get your loan fully forgiven, you have to really question, you probably can't honestly certify to this bullet point here. Or if you held on to your money because you weren't sure how to use it and you never actually used your funds, you probably can't qualify for this second draw either. Or you could try to use it and then apply for the second draw. But what they're really saying is they want to make sure that everybody has used their money. You don't have to have applied for forgiveness, but you do need to have used your money for eligible expenses before you apply for the second round. I think read through the rest of these, but this is kind of an interesting statement here. I understand that if the funds are knowingly used for unauthorized purposes, the federal government may hold me legally liable, such as charges for fraud. Okay, this is a real threat that I want to make sure that people are very aware of. Okay, and then we're going to keep on going through. I just want to have you guys read through all of these. One of the things is if you are receiving, they do not want you to receive 2 second draw Paycheck Protection Program loans. Similarly, how you couldn't get 2 PPP loans the first time around for the same business, you also can't get 2 second time around, okay? And then you are also not eligible for PPP if you are getting a shuttered venue operator grant. Okay, so that's a separate program. If you're getting that, you can't also get PPP. And then it goes into some specific certifications of people that they have said are specifically not eligible for a second round of PPP. Certain people in the government, if there's a business owned by them, then they cannot be, you cannot have a loan. If you are publicly traded, then you are not eligible for a PPP. If you're organized as a Chinese business or if your entity has significant operations in China, I do want you to read through this, or if you have ownership of someone who is from China or Hong Kong, I do want you to read through this certification because you want to make sure that you are not violating any of these. Okay. So if you have any type of relationship with either China directly, or besides just buying goods from China, if you have any ownership or any significant operations there, please read through this and make sure that you can honestly certify to this piece as well. Yeah, and then you can just read through the rest of these. You're not supposed to be doing any type of political or lobbying activities with this money. And so therefore those types of organizations are not allowed. And then basically we're just saying everything that we're saying here is true and accurate. All right. And that the lender will confirm the eligible loan amounts, and then the lender will be able to confirm eligible loan amounts and using the required documentation. I think it's important to remember, though, that the lender is not required to check the accuracy or the completeness of your loan calculation. So if you apply with payroll costs and you maybe leave out your retirement or you leave out your healthcare costs, it's not really on the banker to ask you to make sure if you have any of those expenses that might make your loan amount higher. They are not going to do that. That is not their job. You may or may not have a banker that might, ask you, but it is not on them to do that. So really to determine the accuracy of your loan, you need to be the person who owns that calculation. All right. So it's on you as the borrower to do your calculation correctly. All right. So then it just kind of goes into a lot of detail, the purpose of the form, and then instructions for completing the form. So I won't read through all of this. We've actually kind of talked through this. This whole section is about determining eligibility, which we've already done in a separate video. And then average monthly payroll costs, we've kind of talked through, but essentially taking your average payroll, dividing it by 12, multiplying it times 2.5. But they do have some specific details in here based on your tax status, Schedule F, partnerships, and things like that. So all of this information is taken into account in my spreadsheet that I have for the webinar that I did last week. So again, if you're interested in that, please go ahead and look in the description box below, because you can get the calculators, Excel calculators, basically to help you determine your loan amount. And I do have these things taken into consideration, some of the special things for Schedule F, and then on the K1s, reduced by Section 179 expense deduction, etc. So I have taken all of this stuff into account to calculate your loan amounts correctly. All right. Well, thanks for making it through all of that with me. I know those applications can get a little bit wordy. They can get a little bit overwhelming. Really just make sure that you're reading through it and that you understand what you're signing your name to. That's one of the biggest things. And then make sure you get your payroll cost right. That is huge. That's kind of the basis of getting forgiveness in the end, is making sure you get the right amount of money to begin with. I truly believe that forgiveness starts with applying for the right amount of loan to begin with. All right. From all of the people that I've seen, it's way easier to get forgiveness when you get the right amount to start with and you're using the right basis for your payroll costs. So if you do need any help trying to figure out exactly what your payroll costs are, please make sure to check out my webinar that's available I put it into a little mini course, and it's available on my website. I'm going to put the link in the description below. So make sure you check that out if you need some additional help, because it will be kind of everything you need to make sure that your payroll costs are exactly right and that you're calculating the right amount. I hope all of this has been informative and helpful to you. Please make sure you like the video if it was, and then put any comments that you may have in the description or in the comments below, because we will be reading through them, and then it'll kind of help inform us like where we're going to be doing the videos next, okay? Because there's a lot more to dissect on this second round of PPP, and we need to know what your questions are so we can get them answered.